This is part 3 of my 5 years in federal prison. Thank you everyone that's been sending the GoFundMe. I'll leave a link. Even if you can send a $5 contribution, that helps. I'm trying to expand this channel, turn it into a podcast, get celebrities on here. I know a lot of actors, musicians, artists, writers, interesting people, former big-time drug dealers like Freeway Ricky Ross, Boston George, and I can get them on the show, and I will. I just want to make sure that I have good production value. I'm doing this on a cell phone. I want to get like a little studio set up, and the contributions are going specifically towards that, saving up, and I'm really going to start putting money into production value and get a podcast going. I won't stop doing the stories. I probably have 100, if not more, stories to share. And some of the people that have become fans of mine have asked if I can get my parents on here. And I talked to my dad about it, and he definitely wants to do it. He's a great storyteller. He used to do public speaking professionally. So I'm gonna have a whole video series of just my dad doing commentary about the stories that I tell, but from his perspective, and I think you guys will like that. Thank you for continuing to buy my book. If you bought it and you liked it, if you can post a review on Amazon or Audible or Goodreads, that definitely helps, and I appreciate all the support. If you would like to talk to me, I try to respond to as many comments as possible, but I'm busy, and there's a lot of them. Instagram's the best place for me. It's the easiest, quickest way for me to reply. If you leave a comment on any photo on there, I'll always respond to it. I don't leave comments on there unresponded to, and that's the best way to contact me. I see the DMs, I see the emails, I will get to them eventually. So this is part 3 of my 5 years in federal prison. In the second part of the federal prison series, we talked about, I just found out that Jenny had cheated on me, and that there's some guy living at my place that I'm paying for. She had taken my cash, my art, and I'm so sick I can't even really process this at this point. My attorney's telling me to mentally prepare to do 10 years. I'm living with this insane Southsider. On the thumbnail, there's a picture of him and I. That's at Victorville. That's when we actually made it to the federal prison outside of the detention center. It's probably like 6 months after the story takes place, maybe 10 months after that. And as I explained earlier, I was obese from methadone. Methadone puts you in a state of constipated paralysis. So went from 126 pounds to about 230. And you can see in that video, my face is still swollen like a balloon. None of my symptoms have been alleviated whatsoever. I'm still crying, I'm still puking, I'm shitting. I have suicidal ideation. If there's ever a time in my life that I want to commit suicide, it's right at this moment. I'm masturbating and crying sometimes simultaneously. It's just an absurd scene. And Chenny, my celly, starts getting more tyrannical and starts acting more like a Nazi. He's like, look, if you're going to be a resident homie, you need to start doing our workout plan. I'm like, dude, I can't even walk. What do you mean? So every morning at 9 o'clock, he literally forces me to go out to the outside recreation area. And the pictures on the first 2 videos, you can see the floors that are kind of like, encapsulated with coil wire. That's the outside recreation. We have access to it all day long. He would make me go out at 9 a.m. with him and all the Southsiders. So there's a bunch of them. We'd stand in a line and do burpees. If you don't know what that is, we'd have to jump down, do a push-up, and leap back up. But and you have to do 113 of them. Southsiders do 113 because M is the 13th letter in the alphabet, M for Mexican. White boys do 123, W is the 23rd letter in the alphabet. And because I was running so-called homie at this point, I'm doing 113 burpees. But every time I'm getting up, first of all, I'm fat, so I can barely breathe as I'm going down to do these burpees. And almost every time I come up reliably, this acidic bile just kind of spews out of my mouth. I'll just be like, bleh. So there's like a puddle of acidic bile right next to me. Come on, homie, you got this. And I'm just like, on top of mandating that I do the workout program, they're making me eat super hot food. This is like what he's telling me. This is the Hispanic remedy for malias. For when you're sick, you eat spicy food and do burpees, which just completely exasperated my sickness. So he's like making me these bowls with chili and jalapenos and all this hot sauce. I'm puking up hot sauce. My my nostrils are flaring as if there's flames coming out because this spicy food's like spouting out of me. And he starts like every day you have to do stand-up count at 4 o'clock in the Fed. So they'll come lock your door for an hour. And so now he's making me do push-ups when it's, when the cell's locked. All right, we're going to do 113 push-ups. And I'm like, man, come on, just let me thrash in my bunk and just, I feel horrible. But he's making me do push-ups. And what am I going to say to that guy? Look at the picture. He's this huge guy. He did, for all his Nazi ways, he did kind of look out for me, and he made sure that people didn't mess with me. But, he would just make me do push-ups at stand-up count. He's making me do burpees every morning at 9. He's making me eat all the spicy food. I'm still on the covert masturbation missions all night long, and he's also making me shower like 5 times a day, and he'll hand me all my dirty clothes. He's like, I want you to go in there. I want you to scrub all your clothes by hand. He's like an OCD. I found over the years a lot of guys in prison, because they've been stripped of so much stuff materially, they become very OCD. Some of them will wax their cell floors. They'll get waxed. They'll steal it because some of the orderlies or porters, the people that have little jobs for the cops, will go and wax floors, the big like day room floors. And then people will steal little bottles of wax, and they'll wax their own cell floor. Like, some of these cells look like little houses. They make picture frames out of like the foil from chips wrappers, like Dorito wrappers. They'll like turn them into photo frames. So like, and they have like little towels that they put down in the beginning of the cell, in the entrance of the cell, all their shoes lined up. Their little cell looks like an actual house, and they pride themselves in that. But I'm such a dirtbag. They'd always call me a biker or a Viking because I'm such a dirtbag. I mean, you've seen a video of me fighting with my ex-wife. That's how I live. Thank God my fiance that I'm with now is on top of it, and she won't allow me to live that way, and she makes me be clean. But when I was in prison, I tried to keep being a dirtbag, and this guy Chenny just was not going for that. I'd have to scrub my clothes by hand in the shower, then I'd have to hang them all up on a clothesline that he made out of like a strip piece of sheet, and I had to do this multiple times a day, which was torturous. I had like muscle atrophy because I'm kicking so hard. It's like just scrubbing I remember having to wring the clothes out in the shower was so much energy that I had to expend. Then I had to do the burpees at 9 a.m. I'm puking up the spicy food, and then I have to do push-ups at the 4 o'clock count. And he's telling me that, yeah, I'm going to make you tougher, rah, rah, rah. So, I'm basically on this Southsider militant program. And one day I'm laying in my bunk, I'm reading that Busted by the Feds book. I'm finding out more and more nefarious stuff about the federal system. For instance, there's this very famous case in New York. These guys were in MDC Brooklyn. I think that's where Tekashi 6ix9ine is right now. That's where Epstein killed himself, I believe. They have multiple ones in New York. I believe it was MDC Brooklyn. And these Italian mafia, or I think they were, I don't know if they were Italian mob, some sort of mafia guys, were fighting another case, like a RICO, and they were talking on the phone because they wanted some soy sauce in the commissary packages, and they were like, hey, I really like the soy sauce, I want to get like 15 bottles of it, whatever they were saying. And the feds indicted them, so they gave them a superseding indictment on top of the RICO Act. This is a famous case that's been busted by the feds, and they got a specialist, which is complete bullshit because they're biased for they're on the Fed side. They got a specialist to say that soy sauce was code word for pounds of heroin. So they gave them a drug conspiracy on top of it, and they won that conviction. And I'm like, this can't be real. But the more that I start talking to people about it, they're telling me, like, this one guy tells me a story about how he, his brother was a meth dealer. He was a Southsider. His brother was a meth dealer, and they were living in the same house, and somebody called and said, hey, is your brother home? He said, no, he's not going to be home until 6 or 7. And they got one of these, lexicon specialist, vocabulary specialist, slang specialist, whatever you want to call it, to say that him saying 6 or 7 meant 6 to 7 pounds of meth. And they charged this guy with conspiracy to distribute meth at 7 pounds or whatever it was. So that's a 10 to life mandatory minimum. So this guy's name was Chubbs. I'll never forget this guy's name was Chubbs. And he said, I'm not taking that. You guys are tripping. There's no way I'm going to take 10 years for answering a phone and saying he's not going to be back till 6 or 7. So he took it to trial. They were offering him 10 years. He got convicted, and they doubled it, and they gave him 20 years because he lost trial for absolutely nothing. Ghost dope, no dope recovered. Him saying his brother's not going to be home till 6 or 7. And he got 20 years in federal prison. I met him right before he was getting shipped to another place. And he got somebody to tattoo "fuck the feds" on his forehead. Huge letters like this, which he probably regrets now because I don't think there's any chance that he can win an appeal at this point. But I'll never forget that guy, this guy Chubbs. And then there was another guy that had a laser pointer, like one of those little laser pointers you do for presentations, and he lived by an airport, and he was shining them at airplanes. And I guess the little laser beam went inside of an airplane, a pilot freaked out. Somehow they tracked down where the laser beam was coming from, and this guy got like some sort of terrorist charge, and he was looking at like 30 years in prison, and I'm not making this stuff up. This really happens. Federal cases are much more rare. You hear about them much less, but the feds are really on some bullshit. They sensationalize, and they kind of manufacture these insane, huge cases out of fairly petty stuff. So I'm laying on my bunk one day, reading Busted by the Feds, completely horrified by all the information I'm learning about the system I'm in, thinking mentally I'm about to do 10 years. And this guy comes in, overweight guy, Hispanic guy, and he's like, "Hey, brother, I run a little prayer circle every night at 8:30 with the fellows, and I don't know if you know about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, but he loves you. And I know that you're suffering, brother, and I would like you to come join our prayer circle." And I'm like, oh God, just to be polite, I'm just like, okay, man, yeah, I'll come. So I end up going to this prayer circle. It's like in the day room. It's maybe like 13, 14 guys. We're all holding hands, bow our heads, and same guy's like, "All right, Jesus, just want to thank you for all my brothers. We're all fighting our cases. We want to get back to our family. And we thank you. We're grateful for you, Jesus. Thank you so much, God. And I forgive my uncle for sucking my dick when I was a kid." And I kind of like look up. I'm like, what? And like a couple other people are looking up like, and it turns into this like 15-minute monologue molestation sermon. While we're all holding hands, he's just like going into detail about his uncle molesting him and like how he became a crack addict. And needless to say, that was my last time at the prayer circle. So nothing's working for me. I'm not getting any relief. I'm not making any calls. I'm just in bed reading Busted by the Feds when I have free time. And when I don't, Chenny's making me work out, clean my clothes, eat spicy food, and I masturbate at night. And it's just getting worse and worse. I'm literally not sleeping. This is about maybe 7-8 weeks have gone by. And the only sleep I'm getting is like these weird cat naps where, everything's fragmentary. And maybe I did sleep for 7 hours. Obviously, you can't stay up for 2 months. But I'm not consciously aware of when I'm sleeping. And that's how bad methadone withdrawal is. People have been commenting, what's worse, heroin or methadone? Methadone's 50 times worse. Straight up. It's the worst thing I've ever kicked. Suboxone's the second worst thing I've ever kicked. And then heroin's third. Alcohol is probably fourth. I got physically dependent to alcohol and I've been addicted to benzos. But the worst for me was methadone. Second worst was definitely benzos. And I'd say alcohol is probably a little more severe than heroin, and then heroin's 4. But I was really going through it. And my attorney came to visit me a couple times, and they're not budging. They're not budging. They're not budging. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, 10 years. He's like, that's all we can do. They want you to take down SAS. That's who they're interested in. And, we weren't even considering that. So he's like, just sit tight. We'll get the psychological evaluation. We'll try to get some mitigating factors. We'll try to get you down to the 5 to 40 bracket. Just have hope. And I'm not really having hope. I'm just completely sick. I'm heartbroken because my girlfriend, ran off with all my money, cheating on me. And I'm thinking about the way I feel right now is the way I'm going to feel for the next 10 years, or 8 years, 8.5 years of my life. it was very overwhelming. Like I said, suicide crossed my mind multiple times an hour. I just like, I was thinking about doing it. You know, I would fantasize about killing myself just to get some relief, because I was just so physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally drained. So, around this time, you know, Chenny's getting sick of living with me. I'm constantly having to shit in the middle of the night. So, you know, you do the courtesy flushes and it's this very loud roar, and it would wake him up, and he'd just kind of look at me, and he was getting pissed off. And this white guy came in that was like maybe like 5 or 6 years older than me. His name was Mike Bear from Hollywood. And he got busted. It was his second time getting busted by the feds. He got busted for for going around and stealing people's mail out of their mailbox so that he could do identity theft. And him and I kind of like talked a couple times when we went to various medical appointments together. And he said, "Hey, why don't you move in with me, man? You can't be happy with that hardcore militant Southsider dude that you're living with." And I was like, I don't know. I got to talk to Chenny, and, you know, I don't want to like offend him, even though I desperately wanted out of that guy's cell. He was a psycho OCD dude, and he was definitely dangerous. Like I said, he broke somebody's jaw in 3 places like the first week I was there. And he did a lot of other stuff that he got away with that, you know, I would hear about. And he was just a very unstable guy, you know, career criminal, convict, hardcore Southsider from Fontana. And so I asked Chenny, I'm like, "Hey, man, this dude Mike wants me to move in. What do you think?" And he's just like, "Man, do whatever you want." And yeah, I'm sure he was sick of living with me because I stunk all the time. I don't think he ever caught me beating off, but who knows? I think if he did, he would have beat me up. He probably would have strangled me, killed me. But he let me go. So I move in with this dude Mike, and I'm kind of kicking. He gives me the bottom bunk. Or I'm not kind of kicking. I'm still in full-blown withdrawal. This is like 2 months later. And it comes up for, you know, my attorney comes to visit me, and he gives me my discovery. So now it's been about 2 months, and I finally get my discovery to see the evidence that they have on me. And I was always paranoid about using my phone when I was selling drugs. You know, people always said I was overly paranoid. I'm like, hell no. Look at what happened with the Patriot Act. They're literally mining our information, and they can access it at any point under false pretenses that it's for, domestic terrorist or international terrorist surveillance. But people don't realize that they can consider any form of drug dealing narco-terrorism, and that's covered by that. So they're allowed to listen to all of your calls, and it can go retroactive, and they can listen to calls. So I had 109 co-defendants. The majority of them had, you know, said stupid stuff on the phone, but they didn't have one phone call with me. What they did have is they had a file from Santa Barbara where their narcotics department there had been on to me for years. People had been telling on me. They were talking about Molly and DMT and all these club drugs. So people had definitely been telling on me. And then they had photographs of Jenny bringing the grocery bag full of dope from Diana's house into the car. They had pictures of me getting the grocery bag from Diana in the Food for Less parking lot. They had, when she was like, "You're going to be okay, mijo," and kissed me on the cheek. They had that whole conversation. So they had that as a controlled buy. And they had me twice. So we're talking about I'm in the over 400 gram bracket, 10 to life. And I'm looking at the evidence, and it's pretty damning evidence. Plus, I signed a confession saying that I planned on distributing it in, exchange for them letting Jenny go. Now, my attorney came and told me that the state police pulled some really grimy stuff. So the feds kept their word with not indicting Jenny. But the state sheriffs, the LA sheriffs that had originally arrested us together, decided to charge her for the dope. So I got charged federally for the first half pound. She got charged for the half pound through the state, and she became a fugitive, and my attorney let me know that. Plus, the girl that I was with the second time I got busted made statements against me. So my case was looking bad. It was really looking like I'm going to do 10 to life. And he got me the psychological evaluation. This guy came, it cost a bunch of money, and he determined that I was ill, that I was bipolar, and therefore I had impulsivity issues. And he wrote this very, very persuasive letter to the U.S. attorney saying that if you just look at the facts of the case, I got arrested one day with a half pound, and then I came right back down even though I knew that I was under police and law enforcement scrutiny, and made another transaction and got caught again. And then that is indicative in itself of me being sick and not having a full mental capacity to really understand the gravity of what was going on. And that's basically what it said. And so he submitted that to the U.S. attorney. So now a couple more weeks are going by. I'm still kicking. I'm in Mike's cell. I'm in the bottom bunk, which is much better for masturbating. And he snores, so I don't even have to discern between, heavy breathing and sleeping. He just, actually snores. So I'm really enjoying being able to beat off with snoring as the backdrop. It's like this weird melancholy soundtrack of snoring and me kind of crying as I'm beating off. So finally my attorney comes back to me. And so now I got busted April 1st, 2009, which is my parents' wedding anniversary, which is also April Fool's Day. That's when I surrendered. And I think I signed my plea agreement in July. What happened is my attorney came to visit me unexpectedly one day, and he said, "Hey, I have really good news for you. The U.S. attorney agrees that there are some mitigating factors. You can't get below the mandatory minimums, but they can change the bracket," which was what our strategy was from the beginning. Now remember, 10 to life or 5 to 40. So he said he's going to drop the bracket to 5 to 40. The U.S. attorney makes a recommendation for how long you do. So just because it's 5 to 40 doesn't mean you're going to get 5. The U.S. attorney can make a recommendation for 8 years. And then the U.S. probation department comes and interviews you, and they make a separate recommendation, and then your attorney makes a recommendation. So there's 3 recommendations, only one of them's on your side. One's from the U.S. attorney, one's from the probation department, and one's from the attorney. So you only have one person fighting for you, and then the judge takes all of the different recommendations into consideration and forms the sentence based on that. And one of the problems with these open pleas, signing for 5 to 40 or 10 to life, so yes, I could sign for 5 to 40, hoping that I get the low end of that I get 5 or 6 years. But the judge could give me 12 years or 13 years or 15 years. Who knows? His wife could have cheated on him the night before, and he ends up giving me 15 years, and I can't appeal it. You can only appeal these things if you go to trial and lose. If you sign a deal, that's it. There's nothing you can do about it. And one of the things that I was worried about is, because I had learned from reading Busted by the Feds, is that they do these big conspiracy cases because they have one target at the top. And in my case, it was this guy, Ramon Mendoza. I think on one of my videos, I posted the LA Times article about the Mendoza clan. Ramon Mendoza was at the top. And what they do is they try to get low-level people like me, people that are on the same level as me, to get convictions because it bolsters their case for him at the top. So I was worried about signing a plea agreement and that, implicating him inadvertently somehow. And my attorney said, no, if you don't sign the 5 to 40 and you don't plead guilty now to the 5 to 40, then they're going to take that offer away. And like 17 or 18 people in my case have already pled guilty anyway. So he's like, you're not implicating this guy. You didn't even know this guy. Will it strengthen their case against him? Yes. But that's not you snitching. That's not you doing anything wrong. Every single person on this case is eventually going to sign. He's probably the only one that's going to take it to trial. Because in the feds, if you take something to trial and you lose, they essentially double your time. So I said, okay, and I signed the 5 to 40. And that was a big victory. Now at least I know that I don't have the 10-year mandatory minimum. So I'm starting to, that's a victory for me. I'm starting to kind of mingle more with the social crowd. I do call Jenny and I get a hold of her. She's a fugitive and she's living in Vegas. And of course, I'm not nice to her. I'm pissed off that she cheated on me. And she's like, I was so confused and lonely, and now the cops are after me. I'm on the run in Vegas. And she's telling me she's doing heroin out there. And I think she's prostituting. She kind of alluded to that. She's like, I'm doing what I got to do to stay high out here. I'm like, Jesus. You know, what happened to all this money we had? Like, I don't, to this day, I don't know what happened. But she was still sending me decent amounts of money. And around this time, somebody came up to me and they said that heroin had come in. Now, here at this prison, you have contact visits. So your family, your loved ones can come visit you. And the way that they do it in the feds and in a lot of state prisons is usually a female comes and visits a male. At MDCLA, they had contact visits, but it could only be your wife, mother. It had to be immediate family, your parents, your kids, brothers, or wife. So somebody's wife would come visit them. They'd get a balloon full of heroin. Usually she'd, put it in her vagina, go to the bathroom, take it out, and you put Vaseline around the balloon so that it's lubricated and can go down your throat easier. You're allowed a contact visit in the beginning, and at the end, you're allowed a kiss at the beginning and at the end of the contact visit. So what happens is in the middle of the visit, girl goes to the bathroom, takes the balloon out because they search them on the way in. It's lubricated. She puts it in her mouth, and then she goes to kiss the guy at the end of visit and uses her tongue to push the balloon into his mouth. He swallows it, and you can bring it back up to the unit. You can eat a tablespoon of shampoo and it induces vomiting, or you can wait for it to shit. You can shit it out, but that's super impractical if people are waiting for it, dope sick. People hardly ever do that. So usually you just eat a tablespoon of shampoo, and it has a reliable way of inducing vomit. So heroin hit. And in prison, a gram of heroin's about $400. On the street in LA, a gram goes for like 40 to 80 bucks right now in 2019. I think back then it was like 50 to 100 bucks for a gram of black tar. So a full gram there's 400, but they sell it in papers. And what it is it's like little smudges, these like little, they're like translucent because it's such a smudge. They'll get heroin and they usually press it against the sink in the cell, like a hot sink, like, the faucet, and they'll press it and the heat lets it kind of stretch out. So you can get a gram and you flatten it out like a pancake and then get a razor blade and you cut it into little pieces and stretch it as far as possible. It's ridiculous. You're getting scraps. Like, I should post some pictures and like show some examples, like just with drawings of what this would look like. But for like $50, you get less than a 0.1. You get like a fraction of a 0.1. But if you haven't been using for a long time, it gets you loaded. So remember, I'm still kicking. So I remember it was 4th of July. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was 4th of July because we were having a holiday meal. The feds, they give you holiday meals like watermelon, hamburgers, soda, every holiday. So holiday meal, somebody comes up to me, hey, you want to buy heroin? And I said, yes, absolutely. And so they show me what the papers look like. I'm almost offended at how small they are. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is nothing. Do you want it or not? I said, yeah. So I had them give me $200 worth, and I called Jenny and I said, hey, I need you to put $200 on this guy's books. It happened instantly. And as soon as they saw that I could make money happen like that, they start giving it to me all the time. Now, the first time that I did the heroin, I didn't have a needle at that point. I'd get needles later on at this place, but the first time I did it, they call it a calito, and you put it in a spoon, like a little plastic spoon. You usually cut it so that it's not round. It's like kind of flat. You put the heroin and you get a pen cap and you just mix it. It's water soluble, so it'll liquefy into oil. And then you usually hang upside down on a bunk and somebody kind of, you put one finger over a nostril, someone puts it in your other nostril, rolls down, and then you're supposed to hang upside down and kind of let it absorb up there. I have no idea if that makes it any more potent, but that's what people do. Calito, it's like a huge thing in prison. We also shoot up with binkies and push and pull syringes, but I didn't have any of that yet. I just had the spoon and I just snorted. I remember as soon as it got in my system, I instantly got relief. And I was actually able to function, and I started walking around. I was having a great day. And that was the beginning of me being a dope fiend in prison and having to juggle debts. And I became avalanched with it, and all sorts of horrible, violent things happened because of my drug addiction. And it got to a point where I couldn't control it. But that's not how drug addicts think. You just think in the moment. You just want to feel better right now. What do they say? Laugh now, cry later. And that's definitely the motto that I was living by at that point. And things just started getting worse and worse and worse that very first time that I did heroin. But I remember I got well. It was the first time I felt normality in like a few months. And it was the first night that I actually got a good night of sleep. But I didn't stop. That was the start of having a proverbial monkey on my back. And the kind of dope fiend I was on the street was just as bad in prison. But I'm running around with people that if I don't pay them, they'll murder me. And we'll get into all that in my 5 years in federal prison, part 4. Thank you so much for watching.